The night was quiet, too quiet for a city that never really slept. Streetlights flickered like tired fireflies, casting long pale shadows across cracked sidewalks and puddles left by the afternoon rain. Beneath one of those lights stood a boy. Thin, barefoot, his hair damp and tangled, holding a battered guitar that was far too big for his small frame. His name was Gabriel Cruz, and he was 14 years old. He stood in front of a small bakery that had closed hours ago. The scent of bread still lingered faintly in the air, but Gabriel's stomach had grown used to ignoring such things. What filled him now wasn't hunger for food, it was a hunger for answers. He looked up toward the dark sky, his lips trembling as he whispered, "Jesus, if you can hear me, please, just let them know I'm okay." Then he strummed a chord, slightly off-key, but rich with emotion. His voice followed, soft at first, but steady. "When I am lost, you are my light, when I am weak you hold me tight." The hymn floated through the still air, wrapping around street corners, drifting into windows where lonely souls paused to listen. Some people slowed down as they walked past, a few smiled kindly. One woman dropped a few coins into the open guitar case, the sound of metal on velvet breaking the boy's rhythm for a second. He nodded, whispering, "Thank you," and kept singing. But Gabriel wasn't singing for money, he was singing for home. 2 years ago, a flood had torn through their small village near the river. A flash flood that came without warning. The water swallowed roads, houses, and everything Gabriel knew. That night, as rain pounded against the tin roof, he remembered his father shouting, "Grab your mother's hand. Don't let go." But in the chaos of rushing water and screams, Gabriel had lost both. He woke up hours later, clinging to a tree branch miles away, surrounded by debris and silence. No parents, no home. Just the cross that hung around his neck. A small wooden one carved by his father on his 12th birthday. "God will never leave you," his father had said as he tied it on him. "Even if I can't be there, He will." Those words had become Gabriel's only comfort. He spent the next 2 years drifting between orphanages, shelters, and eventually, the city streets. No one knew where his parents were, most assumed they hadn't survived, but Gabriel refused to believe that, so he sang. Every night, he would stand in that same spot and sing hymns to Jesus, songs his mother used to hum while washing clothes, songs his father played on an old guitar during Sunday evenings. He sang them not to entertain, but to send them upward, believing that maybe, somehow, those songs would travel further than his voice could ever reach. And sometimes, it felt like they did. One night, an elderly woman named Rosa had stopped to listen. She had gray hair tucked into a bun, a grocery bag in her hand, and eyes that had seen too much sorrow to ignore another's. When Gabriel finished his song, she walked up and asked, "Do you sing here every night, Hijo?" He nodded shyly. "Why?" He hesitated. "Because I think Jesus might be listening." Rosa's lips trembled into a sad smile. "Then I'll listen with him." From that night on, she often brought him a small sandwich or a warm drink, never asking for more than a smile in return. She reminded him of his mother, gentle, patient, and always encouraging him to keep singing. "Your voice is a gift," she'd tell him. "Don't ever hide it, it's how your soul speaks." Gabriel didn't know much about fame or stages or big dreams, but he knew that when he sang, he felt less alone, as if the music itself carried him closer to his parents. That particular night, the one that would change everything, was colder than usual. His fingers were stiff as he strummed, and his breath came out in soft clouds. Still he refused to stop. He closed his eyes and began to sing one of his mother's favorite songs, Amazing Grace. But instead of the usual lyrics, he whispered his own, "I once was lost, but I still pray, for light to guide my parents' way." A man walking his dog stopped in his tracks. A young couple paused their argument. Even the wind seemed to quiet down to listen. There was something in the boy's voice, not just sadness but faith. It carried a weight that no studio microphone could ever capture. When he finished, silence lingered for several seconds before the city slowly came back to life. A car horn, a distant laugh, the hum of passing bikes. The man with the dog dropped a $10 bill in the case. "That was beautiful, kid, you'll go far." Gabriel smiled weakly. "I just hope my voice reaches heaven first." As the night deepened, he packed his guitar and started walking toward the old church where he sometimes slept on the steps. He looked back once more at the spot where he sang. The streetlight flickered, reflecting off the tiny cross around his neck. For a moment, he thought of his parents. Maybe they were out there, hearing him somehow. Maybe one day they'd find him by following the sound of his song. He whispered again, "Jesus, please just one more night with them." The stars above blinked faintly, and a soft breeze swept through the empty street, as if heaven had heard him. What Gabriel didn't know was that his prayer was about to travel further than he ever imagined. To a place filled with lights, cameras, and people who would soon witness a miracle unfold. The morning sunlight spilled through the stained glass windows of the small church, painting soft colors across the worn wooden pews. Gabriel sat there quietly, his guitar resting beside him, his small cross pressed against his chest. He had spent another night on the church steps, shielded by faith more than by the thin blanket Rosa had left him. He wasn't sure what kept him going. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, and loneliness felt heavier each passing day. But every morning, when he saw the light pierce through those windows, he felt like God was reminding him to hold on a little longer. As the church doors opened, the familiar sound of shuffling feet echoed in the aisle. It was Rosa, holding a small paper bag and her ever-present warm smile. "Good morning, my little angel," she said, setting the bag down beside him. "You didn't come by last night, I was worried." Gabriel rubbed his eyes and smiled faintly. "I sang too long, I fell asleep outside." She sighed softly, then handed him the bag. Inside were 2 pandesals and a small carton of milk. "Eat, you need strength to sing." He looked up, puzzled. Strength to sing. Rosa reached into her bag again and pulled out a crumpled flyer. It was slightly torn at the edges, but the words printed in bold were clear. "Amri ctudus tscduy, show the world your gift." She placed it in his hands, her eyes shining with excitement. "You should go," she said. "You sing for the streets every night, maybe it's time to sing for the world." Gabriel's eyes widened as he scanned the flyer. A talent show. On TV. He had seen posters for such things before, people lining up for miles to perform in front of judges and cameras. But that world felt impossibly far from his, a world of bright lights and full stomachs, of shiny shoes and clean shirts. He shook his head. "I don't belong there, Nana Rosa. I don't even have clothes to wear." Rosa smiled gently, her wrinkles deepening like lines of kindness carved by time. "Clothes don't sing, Hijo. Hearts do. And you have one that people need to hear." Gabriel looked down at the flyer again, his fingers brushing over the words "Show the world your gift." That night, he sat under his streetlight again, the flyer beside his open guitar case. He couldn't stop thinking about it. What if, just maybe, his song could reach someone who could help him find his parents? What if that was why he still sang every night, why God hadn't let him give up? He looked up at the sky and whispered, "If this is what you want, Jesus, show me a sign." The wind picked up suddenly, lifting the flyer from the ground. It fluttered in the air and landed directly on his guitar strings, right on top of the cross that hung there. Gabriel laughed softly, a tear escaping down his cheek. "That's a yes, isn't it?" Saturday morning, Gabriel stood outside the giant glass building where auditions were being held. Hundreds of people surrounded him, some practicing scales, some laughing nervously, others scrolling through phones, their families cheering them on. Gabriel stood alone, clutching his guitar and wearing the only shirt he owned, freshly washed and sun-dried by Rosa the day before. His heart pounded so loudly he thought others might hear it. The line moved slowly. Every few minutes, a door opened, a contestant went in, and muffled music spilled out. When the door closed, only the echo of applause or silence remained. Next, a woman called out, clipboard in hand. Gabriel took a deep breath and stepped forward. His feet felt heavy, his palms sweaty. He whispered a quiet prayer before walking in. Inside, bright lights nearly blinded him. The stage was vast, it looked like another world. 3 judges sat behind a long table, faces he recognized from TV. Simon the sharp-eyed one, Maya the compassionate singer, and Tony, the funny but honest musician. When they saw him, their expressions softened. He was small, clearly nervous, holding a guitar that looked older than he was. Simon leaned forward. "What's your name, young man?" "G. Gabriel Cruz," he stammered. "And how old are you?" 14. "Sir." Maya smiled warmly. "What will you be singing for us today?" Gabriel hesitated. His voice trembled as he said, "A song to Jesus, and to my parents." The room fell silent. Simon raised an eyebrow. "And to your parents?" Gabriel nodded, clutching his cross. "I lost them 2 years ago. A flood took them. But I believe Jesus listens when I sing." "Maybe they do too." Even the camera operators seemed frozen in place. Simon finally said softly, "Well then, Gabriel, sing for them." Gabriel closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to strum his guitar. The first few chords were shaky, but then his voice broke through, fragile, pure, and full of something words couldn't capture. "When I am lost, you are my light. When I am weak, you hold me tight. When I can't see, you make me brave. You are the hope my heart still craves." The melody filled the hall, wrapping every corner in quiet reverence. People watching from backstage stopped talking. One of the producers wiped her eyes. Maya placed a hand over her heart. Halfway through, Gabriel's voice wavered, his eyes glistening. "This is for you, Mama, Papa, I'll keep singing till I find you." And then he sang louder, not for the judges, not for the cameras, but for heaven itself. When the final note lingered in the air, no one moved. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full, sacred. Simon, known for his harsh critiques, swallowed hard before speaking. "Gabriel," he said softly, "in all my years of judging, I've never heard a song so pure." Maya's eyes were red. "You didn't just sing a song, sweetheart. You gave us a prayer." The audience watching on the monitors backstage erupted into applause. Some were crying, some hugging strangers. Even the security guard at the back wiped away a tear. Gabriel stood there, confused but smiling shyly, tears streaking his cheeks. He whispered again, so softly that only his microphone caught it, "Thank you, Jesus." He didn't know it yet, but that audition, that small act of faith, was about to echo across millions of hearts, and lead him closer to the miracle he'd been praying for all along. The studio was silent. Cameras were still rolling, but even the usual hum of background chatter had disappeared. Gabriel stood in the center of the bright stage, clutching his guitar as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. His knees trembled, yet his spirit felt light, as though something divine had entered that space with him. The host, standing offstage, whispered into his mic, "We've seen thousands of auditions this season, but what's about to happen might just be something none of us will ever forget." The judges still hadn't recovered from Gabriel's first song. His voice had struck a chord deep for words, and even Simon, the famously stoic critic, had needed a moment to compose himself. "Gabriel," Maya said gently, "would you sing another song for us? Maybe one that's close to your heart." Gabriel hesitated, his eyes darting to the floor. "I have one. But it's not a song you'll find on the radio. It's one I wrote." Simon leaned forward. He nodded. "Yes sir, I wrote it for Jesus and for my mom and dad." Tony smiled softly. "Then sing it, son. Sing it like they're right here with you." Gabriel took a deep breath, strummed a few soft chords and closed his eyes. The lights dimmed slightly, focusing just on him, a small, fragile silhouette surrounded by a halo of gold. The world outside that room seemed to fade away. He began to sing, "I once was found but now I seek, the arms that held me when I was weak." The rain had taken, but love remains. I'll sing till heaven knows their names. His voice trembled at first, like a candle flickering in the wind. But as he sang, something within him ignited. Strength born from sorrow, faith forged in loss. The melody soared higher, filling the room with a haunting beauty that made everyone forget where they were. "Through storm and fire, through fear and pain, my song will rise again, till grace restores what time erased. I'll sing to you, my friend." People in the audience began to cry, not because of the lyrics alone, but because of the way he sang them. Every word carried a story, every note a prayer. It wasn't just music, it was healing. Backstage, the crew members who had been running cameras and sound stood motionless. One whispered to another, "This kid's voice, it's like he's talking straight to God." And then, just as the song reached its most powerful line, something unexpected happened. "If they can hear me from afar, I'll sing till heaven breaks the scar." Gabriel looked up, tears streaming down his cheeks, and from the audience, a sharp gasp rippled through the crowd. In the middle row, a man and a woman sat frozen. The woman's hands shook violently, the man's lips parted as if trying to speak but no sound came out. The woman's eyes filled with disbelief. "That voice," she whispered, clutching her husband's arm. "Carlos, that's him." The man blinked rapidly, tears flooding his eyes. It can't be." But it was. They hadn't seen their son since the flood 2 years ago. They'd searched shelters, hospitals, even morgues, but no one had ever found Gabriel. For months, they'd lived with the unbearable ache of uncertainty, yet somehow they never stopped praying. And now in this crowded studio, broadcast to millions of homes, their prayers had been answered. In the voice of the boy singing on stage, the woman covered her mouth, sobbing quietly, "That's our Gabriel. That's our baby." The man rose from his seat, trembling, tears streaming down his weathered face. "He's alive," he whispered. "Thank you, Lord, he's alive." On stage, Gabriel kept singing, unaware of what was unfolding before him. "Amazing grace, still guiding me, through every wave, through every sea." Simon's jaw clenched as he looked at the boy. He'd seen countless performers move crowds, but this was different. There was something divine about this moment, something that couldn't be measured by applause or ratings. As Gabriel sang the final line, his voice broke softly, "I'll sing to find my way back home." Then silence. The audience sat still, stunned. The only sound was a soft sniffle from somewhere in the back. Then, slowly, as if waking from a trance, people began to stand one by one until the entire studio was on their feet. The applause grew, not loud and wild, but reverent and full of awe. Simon's voice cracked as he said, "Gabriel, you didn't just sing, you performed a miracle." Gabriel smiled faintly, wiping his tears. "Thank you, sir. I just wanted Jesus to hear me." And then, before the host could move on, a trembling, desperate voice, "Gabriel." The boy froze. The guitar almost slipped from his hands. That voice, it was familiar, too familiar. He turned his head slowly toward the sound. The crowd parted instinctively, like the Red Sea making way for a miracle. And there, standing among the flashing lights and cameras, were two faces he had seen only in his dreams for years, worn by time, marked by tears, but unmistakably his parents. The woman's hands were over her mouth. The man could barely breathe. "Papa," Gabriel whispered, his lips quivering. The man nodded, sobbing uncontrollably. "Yes, son, it's us." The guitar fell from Gabriel's grasp as he stumbled forward. His legs shook, His breath came in short gasps, and then before anyone could react he dropped to his knees, crying, not from pain, but from overwhelming impossible joy. His mother ran to him, arms outstretched, tears pouring down her face. She fell to her knees too, wrapping him in the embrace she thought she'd lost forever. His father joined them, holding both as the crowd erupted in tears and applause. It was as if heaven itself had orchestrated this moment, a reunion carried on the wings of faith and song. The cameras zoomed in on the boy's tear-streaked face as he whispered between sobs, "I told you, Jesus, you'd bring them back." Simon wiped his eyes and said softly to the camera, "Sometimes the world doesn't need another star, it needs a sign of hope." The crowd didn't stop clapping for several minutes. Some prayed quietly, others simply stood in awe. The story of a lost boy who sang to Jesus for his parents, and found them on national television, was already spreading through social media, touching hearts everywhere. But for Gabriel, time had stopped. In that moment in his parents' arms, nothing else mattered. The lights, the cameras, the fame, all faded, only love remained, and somewhere deep in the stillness of that stage, it felt as if heaven was smiling. The studio was trembling, not from noise, not from the thunderous applause that came seconds later, but from the weight of pure emotion. What had begun as an audition had turned into something divine. It wasn't a performance anymore. It was a reunion written by heaven itself. Gabriel's parents, Carlos and Maria Cruz, were now kneeling on the stage, clutching their son like they were afraid he'd vanish again if they let go. Gabriel's small hands gripped their faces, tracing every tear, every wrinkle, every sign that they were real. "Mama, Papa," he whispered, barely able to breathe between sobs. "It's really you." Maria's lips trembled as she nodded, brushing his hair back with trembling fingers. "It's me, baby. Oh Gabriel, my sweet boy, I prayed every night that Jesus would lead me back to you." Carlos's voice cracked as he added, "We never stopped looking, son. We searched everywhere. Shelters, hospitals, but the flood took everything. We thought." He couldn't finish. His throat closed up, the words dissolving into tears. Gabriel reached out, clutching his father's hand. "I thought you were gone," he whispered, "but I sang every night. I thought maybe Jesus could send my voice to you." Maria pulled him back into her arms. "He did, mi amor. He did. He sent it right here." The audience sat motionless, many openly weeping, some clasping their hands in prayer. It felt sacred, like witnessing a miracle unfold. Even the show host, who had seen hundreds of emotional moments, wiped his eyes as he whispered to the camera, This is what faith looks like." Simon Cowell, usually composed and analytical, turned his chair slightly, covering his mouth. His eyes glistened. "This isn't an audition anymore," he said softly. "This is something far greater." Maya, one of the judges, pressed a hand to her heart. "This is a reminder," she whispered, "that love doesn't die. It just waits to be found again." Backstage, producers and staff members stood frozen. Some were hugging, others were crying. Cameramen zoomed in slowly, trying not to shake from the emotion that filled the room. Every person, whether believer or skeptic, felt something deep stir within them. A sense that they were witnessing something holy. Gabriel's knees were still pressed to the floor. He looked up at the ceiling lights, which to him felt like beams of heaven's glow. "Thank you, Jesus," he said through tears. "You never left me." The crowd broke into another round of applause, this time louder, wilder, yet reverent. Some raised their hands, others shouted amen. It wasn't just a talent show anymore. It had become a testimony. As the applause died down, the host stepped forward, his voice trembling with emotion. "Gabriel, would you like to finish your song? Maybe with your parents this time?" Gabriel looked at his mother, who smiled through her tears. "We haven't sung in so long," she said softly. He picked up his old guitar, the one that had carried his prayers for years, and wiped a tear from the strings. His father placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. His mother joined in, her voice soft and quivering. Together, they began to sing the final verse of his song. "Through every storm, through every night, your grace will be my guiding light. The lost are found, the broken whole. You breathed your life into my soul." Their voices blended, imperfect but powerful, carrying through the hall like the sound of angels. The audience was silent again, not wanting to miss a single note. Some people knelt where they were, quietly crying. When the song ended, there was no countdown, no show music, no announcer voice, just the sound of hundreds of people standing, clapping slowly at first, then faster, until it became a wave of love washing over them. Gabriel turned to the judges. "I don't want to win anything," he said simply. "I already did." Simon nodded, smiling through the tears he tried to hide. "You did, Gabriel. You reminded us what winning really means." Maria kissed her son's forehead. "You were never lost," she whispered. "You were just waiting for God to show you the way home." The producers cut to a live interview backstage after the performance. Reporters surrounded the family, tears in their own eyes, microphones trembling in their hands. "Gabriel," one reporter asked, "what were you thinking when you saw your parents walk toward you?" He smiled softly. wasn't thinking, I was just feeling. I felt love, I felt Jesus, I felt home. Maria wiped his tears gently. He never stopped singing, she said proudly. Even when the world forgot about him, he never stopped singing. Carlos nodded. He reminded us all that faith doesn't need proof, it just needs to keep believing. That night, the clip of Gabriel's performance, and the reunion that followed, spread across the internet like wildfire. Within hours it was the most watched video in the country. Headlines read, 14-year-old song to Jesus reunites him with lost parents live on stage. The miracle audition that made the world cry. Churches played the video in Sunday services. News anchors wept as they replayed the moment. Strangers shared it online, writing captions like, proof that love never dies, and, faith brought them home. Meanwhile, Gabriel and his parents sat quietly in their small hotel room that night. The cameras were gone, the noise had faded, but the peace lingered. Maria sat beside her son on the bed, brushing his hair just like she used to. Carlos stood by the window, his hand on the cross that still hung around Gabriel's neck. You kept it all this time, Carlos said softly. Gabriel nodded. It was all I had left of you. Carlos's voice broke. And it brought you back to us. For the first time in years, Gabriel fell asleep between his parents, holding their hands, not afraid anymore. Outside the city lights shimmered, and somewhere far above, the stars burned a little brighter, as if even heaven was celebrating the boy who sang until love found him again. The morning after the miracle, the world woke up to Gabriel Cruz. News anchors' voices carried the same tone, a blend of awe and disbelief. A 14-year-old boy singing to Jesus for his lost parents, found them live on national television. Videos of the reunion played again and again the moment his parents called his name. The look on Gabriel's face when he turned, the embrace that silenced the entire room. By sunrise, hashtags like Fig our miracle and faith brought them home had flooded social media. Even people who didn't normally talk about faith shared the video, writing things like, I don't know if I believe in miracles, but this one felt real. In the small hotel room the show had provided, Gabriel awoke to the sound of birds outside the window. For the first time in years, he wasn't waking up to the cold pavement or the echo of city streets. He turned to his right. His mother was still sleeping beside him, her arm draped protectively across his chest. On the other side his father sat at the little table, reading a Bible that one of the staff members had gifted them the night before. Carlos looked up and smiled. Morning, champ. Gabriel rubbed his eyes and smiled back. Morning, Papa. The word felt strange on his tongue after so long, but beautiful. Maria stirred, blinking awake, and the moment she saw her son's smile, tears welled up again. I still can't believe it, she whispered. All these years, and you were right there. Gabriel shrugged gently. I think I was supposed to be. Maybe if I hadn't been lost, I wouldn't have sung that song. Maybe that was how Jesus made sure we'd find each other again. Carlos set the Bible down and walked over, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Sometimes God doesn't answer right away because he's still writing the story, he said softly. You just had to sing your way to the ending. They laughed quietly, not because anything was funny, but because joy finally felt like something they could hold. By noon, a producer from the show arrived at their room. Gabriel, she said, smiling warmly, the judges and the network want to bring you back tonight, not to compete, but to speak. People around the world have been writing in, they want to hear from you, not just your music but your message. Gabriel blinked in surprise. My message. Maria squeezed his hand. You have something the world needs, Hijo. Go tell them what's in your heart. That evening, the stage lights burned brighter than ever. But this time, Gabriel wasn't afraid. He wasn't that trembling boy singing alone to the night sky anymore. He was standing with his parents in the front row, waiting for his cue. When the host called his name, the crowd roared with applause. Gabriel walked onto the stage with quiet confidence, holding the same battered guitar, the one that had carried his prayers through every lonely night. Simon stood and addressed the audience. Last night, we witnessed something I will never forget. Gabriel's performance wasn't just a song, it was a message of faith, hope, and the kind of love that survives anything. Gabriel, the stage is yours. Gabriel nodded, stepping up to the microphone. His voice was soft but it carried through the silent room. Last night, he began, I didn't think I'd see my parents again. I didn't even think I'd make it here. For 2 years I sang in the streets, not for fame, not for money, but because I believed Jesus was listening. I believed that somehow, my voice might reach heaven or maybe even reach them. He looked toward his parents in the front row, smiling through tears. And it did, he continued. It reached them, and it reached all of you. I used to think I was alone, but I've learned something. No one who believes is ever really alone. Hope isn't something you see, it's something you sing, even when the world is silent. The audience was quiet. You could hear soft sniffles in the crowd, even from the production crew. Gabriel's voice grew steadier. If you're out there feeling lost, like no one hears you, I promise, someone does. Keep singing, keep praying, keep believing, because miracles they still happen. I'm standing here because when a hush fell over the room. Then, a slow clap began, one person, then another, until the entire audience rose to their feet. Cameras captured faces streaked with tears, people holding hands, strangers hugging. Simon stepped forward visibly moved. "Gabriel," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you've given the world something we didn't even know we were missing, faith and goodness." Over the next few days, invitations poured in. News networks, churches, and charities wanted to speak with the boy who sang to Jesus. But Gabriel stayed humble. When asked what he wanted to do next, he always said the same thing. "I just want to keep singing. Not for fame, but for faith." Soon Gabriel and his parents started visiting orphanages, hospitals, and shelters, places full of people who, like him, had known loss. He would play his guitar, share his story, and sing the song that reunited his family. At one children's hospital, a little girl in a wheelchair asked him, "Do you really think Jesus heard you?" Gabriel smiled gently and knelt beside her. "I don't think," he said. "I know, because sometimes he answers through music." The girl beamed, and as Gabriel began to sing, nurses and parents filled the hallway to listen. His voice, that same trembling, honest voice, filled every heart it touched. Months later, when Gabriel was invited to perform at a national charity concert, he stood on stage before thousands of people and millions watching from home. But before he sang, he looked into the camera and said, "This isn't my story, it's our story. Everyone who's ever lost something, and still dared to hope. Because faith isn't about seeing what's next, it's about trusting that God's not done writing your song." Then he sang, "I once was lost, but love remained, through every tear, through every pain. And now I see, through heaven's call, the grace that bound us after all." As the final note echoed, the audience rose again. Not just clapping, but crying, praying, cheering. Across the world, people watching on screens whispered their own quiet, "Thank you," to heaven. For some, Gabriel's song reminded them to forgive. For others, it renewed their faith. For everyone, it reminded them that kindness, love, and belief could still change the world. That night, as the lights dimmed and Gabriel packed his guitar, he turned to his parents. "Do you think people really heard it, Mimald?" "Oh, they heard it, my amor. But more than that, they felt it." The Carlos nodded. "Your song didn't just find us, son, it found everyone who'd stopped believing." Gabriel looked up at the night sky, the same sky he had sung to all those lonely evenings, and smiled. "Then I guess that's my real stage," he whispered. "The world." And as the stars twinkled above, one could almost imagine that heaven itself was still listening, proud, grateful, and forever touched by the boy who sang to Jesus until love answered back.